Well, hello there, and welcome to my kitchen table. A place in most homes where we can sit with family and friends and just talk for hours. I'll have to stop lifting my head up like that because you're getting my circle light or ring light or whatever it's called reflection in my glasses. So, let's see where we're off to today, shall we? We're off to what I would call Johnston, but what the Scottish call Johnstown. And it is a town in the area of Renfrewshire, in the west central lowlands of Scotland. One of its main areas that it's close to is actually Glasgow. It's about 12 miles outside Glasgow, and it's actually classed as being in the greater Glasgow urban area. So there you go. Now you know approximately where we're at. Take a seat and I'll tell you a story. Peter Britton Tobin. That's who we're going to be talking about today. He was a Scottish convicted serial killer and sex offender who served a whole life order at His Majesty's Prison, Edinburgh, for 3 murders committed between 1991 and 2006. Police also investigated Tobin over the deaths and disappearances of other young women and girls. So let's get stuck in. Peter Tobin was born in Johnstown, Renfrewshire, in Scotland, on the 27th of August 1946. The youngest of 8 children, to Daniel and Marjorie, who for some reason like to be called Margaret. Each to his own, I suppose. Mind you, my name's Susan and I get called Sue. But that's a totally different name, isn't it? Margaret from Marjorie. Anyway, he had 4 older sisters and 3 older brothers. Tobin was a difficult child, and in 1953, at the age of 7, he was sent to an approved school. That's like a really nasty boarding school. He reportedly joined the French Foreign Legion as well, but he deserted. Tobin later served a sentence in a Borstal, and in 1970 he was convicted and imprisoned in England for burglary and forgery. He moved to Brighton in Sussex in England, where he married his 17-year-old girlfriend, Margaret Mountney. She was a clerk typist, and he married her in August 1969. They separated after a year, and she divorced him in 1971. In 1973, Tobin married a local nurse, 30-year-old Sylvia Jeffries. The couple had a son named Ian later that year, and a daughter named Claire in 1975, who very sadly passed away quite soon after her birth. This second marriage lasted until 1976, when Sylvia left with their son. Tobin then had a relationship with Cathy Wilson. The couple married in 1989, with a son named Daniel born later that year. In 1990 they moved to Bathgate, West Lothian in Scotland. Now, just in case you haven't noticed, this guy's going from Scotland to the south of England, back to Scotland to the south of England, back to Scotland to the south of England, and that's what he does all his life. They moved to Bathgate, West Lothian in Scotland. Wilson left Tobin in 1990. Didn't have much luck, did he? I wonder why. And he moved back to Portsmouth in Hampshire. Oh, sorry, she moved back to Portsmouth in Hampshire, where she actually grew up. All 3 wives later gave similar accounts of falling for a charming, well-dressed psychopath who turned violent and displayed a sadistic streak during their marriages. In May 1991, Tobin moved to Margate in Kent. So he's now gone from Scotland down to the south of England again. And in 1993 to Havant in Hampshire, to be near his youngest son. Tobin served 10 years in prison for rape, buggery and indecent assault of 2 girls, like rape and buggery on indecent assault. Anyway, of 2 girls in 1993, following which he was released in 2004. 3 years after his release, he was sentenced to life with a minimum of 21 years for the rape and murder of Angelica Cluck in Glasgow in 2006. Remains of 2 teenagers who went missing in 1991 were subsequently found at his former home in Margate in Kent. Tobin was convicted of the murder of Vicky Hamilton in December 2008, resulting in his minimum sentence being increased from 21 years to 30 years. And of the murder of Diana McNichol in December 2009, the following year. And that resulted in a whole life order. A whole life order, or a whole life tariff, is what we call life without parole. They don't get out. At all. Tobin was diagnosed as a psychopath. Surprise, surprise. By a senior psychologist. And it was actually thought that he was connected with the Bible John murders in the late 60s. Now, Bible John is an unidentified serial killer. He was believed to have murdered 3 young women between 1968 and 1969 in Glasgow, in Scotland. The victims of Bible John were all young, brunette women between the ages of 25 and 32, all of whom met their murderer at the Barrowland Ballroom. That was a dance hall and music venue in the city. The perpetrator had never been identified, and the case remains both unsolved and one of the most extensive manhunts in Scottish criminal history. The case would prove to be the first time in Scotland in which the Crown Office actually authorised publication of a composite drawing of an individual suspected of murder. This unidentified serial killer became known as Bible John, due to his having repeatedly quoted from the Bible and to have condemned any form of adultery while in the company of his final victim. The known movements and modus operandi, or MO, of convicted serial killer and rapist Peter Tobin gave rise to speculation that he might be Bible John. This was after his convictions for the 3 murders in the late 2000s, but police later eliminated Tobin as a suspect. On the 4th of August 1993, Tobin attacked 2 14-year-old girls at his flat in Lee Park, Havant, after they went to visit a neighbour, but they weren't home. They stopped at Tobin's flat and asked if they could wait there, after holding them at knife point and forcing them to drink strong cider and vodka. Tobin assaulted and raped the girls, stabbing one of them while his youngest son was present. He then turned on the gas cooker without lighting it and left them for dead. But they both survived. To avoid arrest, Tobin went into hiding and joined the Jesus Fellowship, which is a religious sect that was in Coventry at the time, and he joined under a false name. He was later captured in Brighton after his blue Austin Metro car was found there, so they knew he was in the area. It was just a case of keeping an eye out. On the 18th of May 1994 at Winchester Crown Court, Tobin entered a plea of guilty and received a 14-year sentence. In 2004, Tobin, then 58 years old, was released from prison and returned to Paisley in Renfrewshire. In September 2006, Tobin was working as a church handyman at St Patrick's Church in Alderston in Glasgow. He had assumed the name of Pat McLaughlin to avoid detection, as he was still on the violent sex offenders register following his 1994 convictions for the rape of the two girls. An arrest warrant had been issued for Tobin in November 2005 after he moved from Paisley without notifying the police. But he wasn't discovered until he became a suspect in the murder of 23-year-old Angelica Cluck at the church. In May 2007, he received a further 30-month sentence for breaching the terms of the register, the sex register. Cluck was a student from Poland and was staying at the presbytery in St Patrick's Church, where she worked as a cleaner to help finance her Scandinavian studies course at the University of Gdansk. She was last seen alive in the company of Tobin on the 24th of September 2006 and is thought to have been attacked by him in the garage attached to the presbytery. Cluck was beaten, raped and stabbed, and her body was concealed in an underground chamber beneath the floor near to the confessional in the church. Forensic evidence suggested that she was still alive when she was placed under the floorboards. Isn't it amazing how they know that? Police found her body on the 29th of September, and Tobin was arrested in London shortly afterwards. He'd been admitted to hospital under a fictitious name with a fictitious ailment. A 6-week trial resulted from the evidence gathered under the supervision of Detective Superintendent David Swindle of Strathclyde Police and took place at the High Court of Judiciary in Edinburgh between the 23rd of March and the 4th of May 2007. The trial judge was Lord Menzies. The prosecution was led by Advocate Deputy Dorothy Blaine and the defence by Donald Finlay, KC. Tobin was found guilty of raping and murdering Cluck and was sentenced to life imprisonment to serve a minimum of 21 years, like I said earlier. In sentencing Tobin, Judge Lord Menzies described him as an evil man. Like me, he's really good at understatements. In June 2007, Tobin's former house in Bathgate was searched in connection with the disappearance of 15-year-old Vicky Hamilton, who was last seen on the 10th of February 1991 as she waited for a bus home to Reading near Falkirk in Scotland. Tobin is believed to have left Bathgate for Margate a few weeks after her disappearance. On the 21st of July 2007, Lothian and Borders Police released a statement that they had arrested, cautioned and charged a male in connection with the matter, and a report had been submitted to the Procurator Fiscal, but did not immediately confirm the identity of the man arrested. At Tobin's house at 50 Irvine Drive, Margate, the bodies of Vicky Hamilton and Dinah Nichol were found in the garden. The investigation later led to the forensic search of a house in Southsea in early October 2007, where Tobin is believed to have lived shortly after leaving Bathgate. On the 14th of November 2007, Lothian and Borders Police confirmed that human remains found in the back garden of 50 Irvine Drive, a house in Margate occupied by Tobin in 1991, were those of Hamilton. In November 2008, Tobin was tried at the High Court in Dundee for Hamilton's murder. He was again defended by Donald Finlay. I think that guy should give up. While the prosecution was led by the Solicitor General for Scotland, Frank Mulholland, KC. The prosecution case went beyond the circumstantial evidence of Tobin having lived at the two houses in Bathgate and Margate in 1991, and consisted of eyewitness testimony of suspicious behaviour by Tobin in Bathgate, evidence to destroy his alibi, and DNA and fingerprints left on a dagger found in his former house, on Hamilton's purse, and on the sheeting in which her body was wrapped. After a month-long trial, Tobin was sentenced. He was convicted of Hamilton's murder on the 2nd of December 2008. When sentencing Tobin to life imprisonment, the judge said, "You stand convicted of the truly evil abduction and murder of a vulnerable young girl in 1991, and thereafter of attempting to defeat the ends of justice in various ways over an extended period. Yet again, you have shown yourself to be unfit to live in a decent society. It's hard for me to convey the loathing and revulsion that ordinary people will feel for what you have done. I fixed the minimum period which you must spend in custody at 30 years. Had it been open to me, I would have made that period run consecutively to the 21 years custodial period that you are currently serving." On the 11th of December 2008, Tobin gave notice to court officials that he intended to challenge the verdict and overturn the sentence imposed on him. The appeal was dropped on March the 20th. Dinah Nichol, and it's Dinah, not Diana, Dinah. Dinah McNichol, an 18-year-old sixth former from Tillingham in Essex, was last seen alive on the 5th of August 1991, hitchhiking home with a male friend from a music festival in Liphook in Hampshire. While hitchhiking, they accepted a ride from a male subject. A friend was dropped off at junction 8 of the M25 near Reigate, while McNichol stayed in the car with the driver. That's got to have been the stupidest thing anybody could ever have done. She was never seen again. After her disappearance, regular withdrawals were made from her building society account at cash machines in Hampshire and Sussex. Totally out of character for McNichol, who had told friends and family that she intended to use the money to travel and to further her education. In late 2007, Essex Police reopened the investigation into McNichol's disappearance following new leads. On the 16th of November 2007, a second body was found at 15 Irvine Drive in Margate, later confirmed by police to be that of McNichol. On the 1st of September 2008, Crown Prosecution Service served a summons on Tobin's solicitor, accusing him, Tobin, not the solicitor, accusing him of her murder. This new trial began in June 2009, but was postponed and the jury discharged in the following month after the judge ruled that Tobin was not fit to stand trial, pending surgery. The case resumed on the 14th of December 2009 at Chelmsford Crown Court. On the 16th of December, after the defence had offered no evidence, a jury found Tobin guilty of McNichol's murder after deliberating for less than 15 minutes. Got to be some sort of record there. And Tobin subsequently received his third life sentence. Operation Anagram was a nationwide police investigation into Tobin's life and movements. The investigation started in 2006 after his first murder conviction, and it was led by DSI Swindle of Strathclyde Police, and increased in intensity in December 2009 after Tobin's third conviction. It aimed to trace Tobin's past movements and possible involvement in 13 unsolved murders, including the 3 victims of the unidentified killer Bible John, which I mentioned earlier. Tobin is reported to have claimed 48 victims in boasts made in prison. Through the Homes 2 database, police forces across the UK were involved in the operation, investigating the possibility of Tobin's connection to dozens of murders and disappearances of teenage girls and young women. Swindle, speaking after Tobin's 2006 conviction for the murder of Cluck, said that Tobin's age and the method of the murder sparked speculation that he may be a serial killer, as did interviews with Tobin. Anagram led to the discovery of the bodies of Hamilton and McNichol. It's believed that as of December 2009, detectives across the UK were following up on up to 1,400 lines of enquiry. As part of their renewed inquiries, police were especially interested in tracing the owners of jewellery items found at his residences. In 2009, police released photographs of 32 pieces of jewellery that they'd found in Tobin's possession between 1991 and 2006, which authorities actually believe to be mementos that Tobin collected during his criminal career. In July 2010, it was reported that officers working on Operation Anagram had narrowed their review down to the 9 unsolved murders and disappearances. Excuse me. The operation was wound down in June 2011, having failed to identify any more victims. Tobin was linked to the disappearance of 18-year-old Louise Kay from Beachy Head in Eastbourne. Now, Beachy Head, there's a lot of people who just don't know, especially around the world, because you wouldn't know it as Beachy Head. What you'd know it as is the White Cliffs of Dover. As a light just come on, yeah, you know that now, don't you? Every time you look at a picture of the UK, you see a picture of the White Cliffs of Dover. That's actually Beachy Head, and it's in Eastbourne, not Dover. Anyway, so he was linked to the disappearance of 18-year-old Louise Kay from Beachy Head in Eastbourne during 1988. Kay was never seen again after telling a friend she was going to sleep in her car at Beachy Head after an evening with friends, something she'd done previously. Neither Kay nor her gold Ford Fiesta car with a white door have ever been seen since. Operation Anagram established that Tobin was working in a hotel in Eastbourne at the time she disappeared, and learned that he was selling a small hand-painted car after she'd vanished. Tobin had a history of working with dealing cars for an auction company and also had links to scrapyards. It's thought that Tobin could have repainted Kay's car and then sold it on to hide his crime. Kay had met a mysterious Scottish man shortly before she disappeared, and it was known that he had given her money for petrol for her car. Kay's case was featured on Crime Watch in 1994. Now, the thing is, if a body's thrown off Beachy Head, it's not getting found. Ever. So that's all he would have had to do. Had his wicked way with her, picked her up and threw her over. There's no railings or anything like that. I couldn't go there, I've got vertigo. Jeez, I'd fall off. But yeah, that's how easy it would have been. Swindle stated in 2018 that he believed Tobin killed Kay. Detectives investigated whether Tobin was responsible, but couldn't prove his involvement. At the time of the disappearance, Tobin owned a property at 22 Windlesham Road in Brighton, just up the road. The house and its gardens have never been searched for remains. But like I said, why would he bury her in his garden when all you'd have to do is throw her over the cliff? Because a body will never be found. Operation Anagram ordered the search of the two houses that Tobin had owned in Brighton in relation to the search for Kay, but did not search the Windlesham Road property. Wonder why? Former police officer and investigator Mark Williams Thomas, yes, it's hyphenated, stated in a documentary in 2018, part of his The Investigator, a British crime story series, that he believes the body of Kay is still buried in the garden of the property. So go and look for it then. The murder of 22-year-old Jessie Earle in 1980 was also investigated by Operation Anagram. Earle had also disappeared in Eastbourne, and a skeletonized body was found in 1989, concealed in dense shrubland on Beachy Head, a place where she would often take walks, and the same place Louise Kay had vanished from in 1988. Her own bra had been tied around her hands to restrain her. As with Kay, Tobin was living in the area at the time of her murder and was possibly working as a handyman at the Holy Trinity Church in Eastbourne at the time she disappeared. Earle was known to have been nervous about a man she had met while previously out walking. She had reportedly described meeting a middle-aged Scottish man near the same spot her body was found. Shortly after the discovery of Earle's body became public knowledge in 1989, Tobin hurriedly moved his wife and child a great distance to Bathgate in Scotland. Up he goes again. Without prior discussion with his wife of the plans, which suggested that he had an underlying reason to suddenly leave the area. This was notably similar to how Tobin had suddenly moved a great distance from Bathgate to Margate in 1991, shortly after he murdered 15-year-old Vicky Hamilton in Bathgate, which showed how Tobin had a habit of moving across the country to avoid being detected for crimes that he'd committed. This was also suggested to be the case in Earle's murder, as Tobin was found to have checked into a hospital in Glasgow a few days after she was killed, which again fitted the habit of him moving as far away as possible after committing the murder. In 2012, criminologist David Wilson produced a documentary as part of his Killers Behind Bars, the Untold Story series, in which he made his case to support the theory that Earle was a likely victim of Tobin. In Mark Williams Thomas' 2018 documentary on Louise Kay, he also supported the theory that Tobin could be responsible for Earl's death, after linking her to Kay's disappearance. There are other links investigated by Operation Anagram. They also investigated, in some cases, disapproved links between Tobin and other murders and disappearances for over 40 cases. But Vicky Hamilton and Dinah McNichol were the only two successful inquiries that ended in prosecution. On the 9th of August 2012, Tobin was taken to Edinburgh Royal Infirmary Hospital after suffering chest pains and a suspected heart attack at His Majesty's Prison, Edinburgh. At the same prison, on the 1st of July 2015, he was slashed with a razor in his sleep, leaving a 20cm scar running down his face and neck. His cellmate, 31-year-old double rapist Sean Moynihan, pleaded guilty to the attack in the October and was sentenced to 32 more months in prison. In February 2016, Tobin was hospitalised, again following a suspected stroke. In 2019, he was reported to be frail and suffering from cancer. He was taken to hospital again on the 30th of March 2022 and released 2 days later. Tobin died at Edinburgh Royal Infirmary on the 8th of October 2022 at the age of 76. On the 16th of October 2022, his ashes were scattered at sea after no relative or next of kin claimed his body. And I hope to God he suffered, because he deserved to suffer. Thank you so much for allowing me to tell you this story. It's a bit windy at points, I know, but it was the only way I could do it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found it interesting, please hit the thumbs up button and consider subscribing. It's free, so, don't hold back. But please remember, if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. They might need it. I've been Sue, TTFN.